Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. So, let's take a look at an update from the BBC on what to expect from Israel now that we have seen the attack that happened by Iran yesterday with 200 rockets being fired at Israel. Yes, Israel does have a right to defend itself, and we're going to hear from yesterday's shortly after yesterday's attack, the ambassador to the United Nations, as he criticized the Secretary General for talking about de-escalation first, instead of condemning the acts that happened by Iran's hand with the missile firings. The thing is yes, Israel does have a right to defend itself, and there should be some sort of international limitation of where that ends. Because if we look at the amount of destruction that they caused from October till now in Palestine with Gaza, there should be some sort of limitation to defending your country. There should be some checks and balances that Israel should have to adhere to, especially since they're a member of the United Nations, the same as Iran is. No, Iran should not have fired the missiles. Iran should be allowing the international community to place sanctions against Israel to ensure that they will not cause any more destruction. Thus, the reasoning behind, I would think, would be behind the Secretary General Antonio Guterres talking about de-escalation first. And a lot of foreign ministers and ambassadors, not only to the United Nations but around the world, are looking for Israel to de-escalate and back down so that a political solution can be found. A couple of days before any attacks happened, before Israel crossed into Lebanon, we have a recording from the United Nations General Assembly where a country is asking for them to force Israel to find a political solution so that Gaza can be rebuilt, humanitarian efforts can reach the people in need in that area, that it can be negotiated to get hostages away from the Hamas, or at least the bodies that can be returned to loved ones. But that isn't what is actually happening there. That we're seeing more escalation towards a full-on war. We have seen a ground invasion that crossed the Israeli troops crossed into Lebanon, and refugees are running for safer areas to get away from the fighting, as witnessed by a friend of this show and a friend of mine who actually lives in Beirut, and he sent me a brief statement about trying to put forth efforts to help those who are fleeing the fighting. Civilians looking to get out of harm's way. So this is what was written in a update email from the BBC that lead to bigger articles. Given Israel's determination to take on its enemies at once, all of its enemies at once, in Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria, the Netanyahu government seems to be in no mood to back Israeli planners. Will likely now be debating not if and when to hit its targets hard. So, in other words, we should be looking for full-on attacks from Israel at certain targets and at certain governments. So, other allies to Israel in the area that are also, of course, Arabic nations are asking for Israel to also back down. So we'll see. We'll have to see what happens with Israel and its enemies. So there are a list of targets and categories that will be listed in that same BBC article. So we'll see about posting it on our news blog so people can actually link so they can read more of that article. I also have today a recording of Kamala Harris as she was in Kamala Harris is addressing people in that were in the path of the latest hurricane, and talking about the devastation and the lives that were lost, and also talking about the aid responders in that area that actually some have left their homes and their families that were also close to the path of the hurricane to help others, and how the humanitarian efforts there are actually going. Then finally, something else I want to really focus back here in Canada is the carbon tax. We've heard, for those of us who live here in Canada, we've heard Mr. Poilievre slam the carbon tax and his whole slogan and campaign, "Axe the Tax," and how Justin Trudeau fights back against him by saying that all he is a bunch of slogans and he has no substance behind him, and he doesn't truly, and how Mr. Poilievre doesn't truly believe in climate change or climate evolution, as I like to call it. And part of the reason why I call it climate evolution is because human beings didn't start it, nor can human beings actually stop it. The planet is going to change to suit itself, not to suit us. Okay, so let's talk more about the carbon tax program in Canada. The carbon tax is set up, and the tax trails all the way through to the end consumer, and it has, in some respects, caused the cost of living in Canada to go up. In the rise in the cost of living has been affected, so that we've also seen rents and food costs go up, that we're seeing people trying to decide between paying the rent or buying food, and facing evictions on top of that, with homeless populations growing and homeless camps, with normal working people actually living in the camps, and not what we would normally see is people that have some sort of mental health condition that causes them to live on the street. It's a lot of economics happening, and thus Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland have put forth the idea of carbon tax rebates back to people. The latest of those rebates is going to be for small businesses, because let's face it, it is the large corporations that are actually the big polluters, and they should have to stomach the tax. But that isn't how the tax was set up. Thus, we're seeing these rebates where they trickle a little bit of money back, when we know that large amounts of that money has been funneled back to the oil and gas sector, back to the large corporations that are experiencing record-breaking profits, and the bonus checks that some of the big CEOs are taking home are at, well, it would take a normal person 2 or 3 years to even, if they could even come close to just one bonus check. So the answer is a carbon tax rebate. Maybe they need to revamp the carbon tax so that it cannot be passed on to the end consumer, that it has to stop at the large manufacturer and cannot be passed on as the cost of doing business. Just saying, something to think about, especially something to think about as we go into the next election, and that could be in another, I believe it would be next year. So when it comes time to vote, how are we going to do this? How are we going to view this carbon tax program that has been put out there? So why don't we get started, and we're going to hear from the United Nations, as I believe Malaysia talks about how Israel should be forced to find a political way of negotiating with Palestine and finding a two-state solution. And we'll move into hearing from Kamala Harris, and then we'll bring it all back to Canada as we hear from Chrystia Freeland as she talks about the carbon tax rebate program for small business.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. President, this is my last opportunity as the Foreign Minister of Indonesia to represent my country to speak before the UNGA. A decade of so many challenges, but at the same time, a decade of Indonesia's many contributions in addressing global issues. One of them is Palestine. Indonesia cannot, I repeat, cannot sit back and relax, seeing the injustice that continues to be committed against the people of Palestine. Indonesia is and will always stand with the people of Palestine to attain their right to have an independent state of Palestine. As I speak now, more than 41,000 people in Gaza have been killed. Situation in West Bank, Lebanon are deteriorating. Is that not enough? Is that not enough? Will the Security Council only take action to stop Israel atrocities when all Palestinians are displaced? Or when 100,000 Palestinians are killed? Or when a regional armed conflict breaks out? That will be too late. PM Netanyahu yesterday mentioned, and I quote, that Israel seeks peace, that Israel yearns for peace. Really? How are we supposed to believe that statement? Yesterday, while he was here, Israel conducted unprecedented massive air attack on Beirut. PM Netanyahu wants the war to continue. We must stop that. I repeat, we must stop that. We must pressure Israel to come back to a political solution for two-state solution. Mr. President, the overwhelming majority of the UN members strongly support the two-state solution, and this is the right time to walk the talk. Recognizing the state of Palestine is the least that we can do now to give Palestinians equal footing on the world states and to exert pressure to Israel to stop their atrocities. Therefore, I urge countries that have yet to recognize the state of Palestine to do so now. If each of us does it, for sure it will give impact. The recognition of Palestine today is an investment that will yield a more peaceful, just, and human world tomorrow. Once again, Indonesia urges the permanent members of the Security Council to concretely act to immediately stop Israel from blatantly violating international law and to end Israel impunity. The mandate of the Security Council is to maintain peace, to create peace, not to maintain and prolong wars, or even worse, to support the perpetrator of atrocities. Inaction means complicity. Colleagues, wherever Indonesia goes, we carry the voices of the global South. Indonesia started this commitment in 1955 when Indonesia hosted the Asia-Africa Conference in Bandung, Indonesia. The Bandung spirit of equality, cooperation, and solidarity will always be alive to inspire the global South to gain their rights, including their rights to development. That is the spirit that we need if we want to have a global leadership where moral virtues are the compass of our business. Do not bury the principle of the UN Charter and international law under the rubble of double standard, trust deficit, and zero-sum game. Mr. President, Excellencies, against these global challenges, Indonesia continues to be part of the solution. By embodying this commitment, Indonesia presidency in 2022 managed to prevent the G20 from collapsing, despite deep geopolitical division. During the global pandemic, we led the establishment of the Pandemic Fund and co-chaired the COVAX AMC Engagement Group to ensure equitable access to vaccine and financial resources, and to safeguard health security for all, especially for the global South. As a member of the Human Rights Council, Indonesia continuously calls for inclusive partnership in addressing global human rights issues. and amidst regional rivalries, Indonesia pioneered the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific as a framework for concrete and inclusive cooperation. To embrace, not to contain. We have demonstrated that global leadership will never be attained through force, domination, and fear. Global leadership should be about guiding collective action by listening, empowering the collaboration, and instilling hope. This is what I say, leadership without hegemony. Mr. President, Excellencies, to attain this vision, we must focus on three key priorities. First, advancing peace through inclusive leadership. Multilateral system should be reformed. The UNSC must be an inclusive space for peace, where a wider range of voices can be heard and timely decisions can be taken for our collective good. Without peace, our effort to attain global goals such as the SDGs will remain a dream without reality. Indonesia is committed to contribute to global peace by being one of the largest troops contributing countries in UN peacekeeping mission and remain firm in our proactive role to counter terrorism. We also strive to ensure that peace we are promoting will be inclusive by advancing the Women, Peace and Security agenda, contributing to women empowerment, including pursuing equal access to education to women and girls in Afghanistan. Investing in women is investing in peace. Empowering women is empowering prosperity for all. Second, ensure a resilient future for shared prosperity. Indonesia believes in a future where all nations thrive no matter how big or small. But the global pandemic and impact of climate change has shown us all that to prosper together, we must work together. Therefore, the implementation of the Pact for the Future is important to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs and scale up partnership and sustainable development even beyond 2030. At the same time, geopolitical tensions have also significantly impacted global supply chain, affected the development trajectory of the global south, many of whom remain unable to freely exercise their right to development. In this context, Indonesia has taken proactive steps. Earlier this month, Indonesia held the second Indonesia-Africa Forum to enhance cooperation in international supply chains and connectivity and build collaboration in preparing for the future challenges. Indonesia also hosted the 10th World Water Forum, I repeat, the 10th World Water Forum this year. We believe that water is a crucial element for shared prosperity. And third, building bridges to foster global collaboration. Colleagues, a winner takes all and take it or leave it mentality should no longer exist when collaboration is the only antidote in addressing the global challenges of today. For Indonesia, a world where the only option is us versus them will only result in the world of us or them. Global solidarity and collective responsibility is the essence of the Bandung spirit, and this spirit guided us through our G20 presidency in 2022, chairmanship of ASEAN in 2023, and continuous effort to voice the aspiration of the global South. Indonesia envisioned a world where nations collaborate together to address shared challenges, uphold international law, and protect human rights and dignity of all people. In Southeast Asia, ASEAN with 650 million people has proven that diversity can coexist with stability, peace, and prosperity. Indonesia also continues to work with ASEAN to restore peace and stability in Myanmar through implementation of the ASEAN 5-point of consensus and to enable the safe and dignified return of the Rohingya people. Beyond ASEAN, we also continue to deepen our engagement to the Pacific region to become part and parcel of an inclusive and peaceful Indo-Pacific architecture based on the principle of solidarity, equality, and mutual respect. Mr. President, colleagues, peace, justice, and humanity will always be at the core of Indonesia's foreign policy. Indonesia understands that the global leadership is not something that inherited, nor does it fall from the sky. It must be earned through our collective efforts. Rest assured that Indonesia's commitment toward common peace, common prosperity, common security will be carried out forward across Indonesia's successive administration. It is in this spirit that I'm proud to announce Indonesia's candidature for a non-permanent seat of the United Nations Security Council for 2029-2030. This candidature reflects our deep commitment to contributing toward global peace and security.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, will deliver a brief statement on today's missile attack on Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran. He will take your questions afterwards. If you are called to ask a question, please remember to state your name and your news outlet. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just hours ago, the Iranian regime launched an unprecedented assault on Israel, launching close to 200 ballistic missiles at our civilian population. An attack on this scale has not been seen since the Blitz of London. 10 million people were forced into bomb shelters. Imagine the entire population of New York City in 10 minutes have to seek shelter. Children, babies, elderly. That's what happened in Israel. The Islamic regime in Iran has now shown the world its true face. They are a terrorist state. For years, they have armed terrorists and rogue states. They are responsible for the death of innocent civilians across the globe, from Europe's war zones to terror attacks in the Middle East, from embassies in Latin America to assault on U.S. personnel. Iran's blood-stained fingerprints are everywhere. Until now, they have hidden behind proxies, but the mask has dropped. They have exposed themselves directly, launching hundreds of missiles into civilian areas. Their evil is now laid bare for all to see. I have called for an emergency session of the Security Council to convene as soon as possible to discuss this unprecedented attack and to issue a clear, unequivocal condemnation of Iran. Let me be very clear. We will defend our people. We will act. Iran will soon feel the consequences of their actions. The response will be painful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. The Secretary General has called for a halt to these escalating attacks between Israel and Iran and its proxies, and there is widespread concern about this conflict spreading throughout the Middle East and drawing in the United States. Is this a concern of Israel, and how are you addressing these fears?
First of all, I will tell you frankly it is that I'm very disappointed from the reaction of the Secretary General. Few hours after such a vicious attack, and the statement he put out, basically it ignores the aggressor and speaks about de-escalation. But we have a member state of the United Nations that just came to this building a few days ago, and they sent ballistic missiles to another sovereign state, and instead of condemning them, some people call for de-escalation. That's disappointing. We have no desire for war or escalation, but we cannot sit idly by when our civilians are being attacked in such manner. And as I said earlier, Iran used to send proxies, but now when they send almost 200 ballistic missiles, that's something that I don't think any other nation in the world will ignore.
Mr. Ambassador, just a quick follow-up. Iran has put out a statement saying that if Israel responds, they will respond even more seriously.
Well, I think I would not advise Iran to challenge our determination, our capabilities. In the past, we have proved it, and we will prove it again.
Ambassador Duclos from Reuters, could you give us any indication of how Israel might respond to this attack? Are Iran's nuclear facilities on the table in terms of a target?
So we will decide about when and how we will respond, but I can tell you one thing. It will be noticed. It will be painful. And I think that the people of Iran who are watching us understand that it's not against the Iranian people, it's against the radical regime that dragged the Iranian people into this situation.
Ambassador. Thank you. Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English. Ambassador, at the very podium that you're at now just a few days ago, Ayman Safadi, the foreign minister of Jordan, stood at the very podium there and he said, on behalf of 57 Arab and Muslim countries, they are willing to provide safety or help provide safety to Israel, safety and security to Israel, your country, if for long-term peace, if Israel, should I go ahead?
Yeah.
If Israel ends their occupation and really pursues an independent state for the Palestinian people, they are willing to work with you towards peace. And he said from that podium, ask any Israeli official, what is their long-term plan for peace other than what you're doing in Lebanon and what's happening in Gaza? So I ask you, sir, what is Israel's long-term plan for peace?
I appreciate the sincerity of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we have a peace treaty with Jordan. But when you look at what's happening today in our neighborhood, attacks from Lebanon, attacks from Yemen, attacks from Iran, every Israeli asks himself today, who is my partner? And unfortunately, today the leadership of the Palestinian Authority are not capable of proving themselves as partner for peace. You know, they haven't condemned Hamas. President Abbas spoke in the General Assembly for half an hour, ignored the atrocities and Hamas completely. He never mentioned Hamas. So I think once there will be a genuine leader among the Palestinians who is serious and sincere about his intentions, he will find the Israelis sitting there willing to negotiate peace. Unfortunately, it is not the case today. Thank you very much.
So I'm here in Augusta to first and foremost thank the federal, state, and local leaders. Mayor, I want to thank you for your leadership in particular on the ground. I am here to personally take a look at the devastation, which is extraordinary, and it is and particularly devastating in terms of the loss of life that this community has experienced, the loss of normalcy, and the loss of critical resources. And so I'm here today to thank all of those who are working to get folks the support and the relief that they so desperately need and so rightly deserve, and that includes the fact that still in this community up to 60% of the residents here do not have power. Many have been without running water for at least a couple of days now. Many have water but no hot water. I was just talking with one of the members of the community and her daughter who lost her husband, and there is real pain and trauma that has resulted because of this hurricane and what has happened in terms of the aftermath of it. I do want to acknowledge and thank the first responders who have been extraordinary. Having met with them, they are the kind of folks that are the heroes in moments of crisis, who do extraordinary work that is about lifting up other people. As it relates in particular to the leaders who are here and doing that work, including the first responders, most of them, as it relates to the local folks, are folks who have personally, and their families have personally experienced loss and devastation, and yet they leave their home, leave their family to go to centers like where I was earlier to do the work of helping perfect strangers. And it really does highlight the nobility of the kind of work that these public servants have dedicated themselves to, which can be in moments of crisis like this so selfless in the way that they do that work. The President and I have been paying close attention from the beginning to what we need to do to make sure the federal resources hit the ground as quickly as possible. And that includes what was necessary to make sure that we provided direct federal assistance. And that work has been happening. I want to thank the governor for his leadership and his close coordination with the federal government, with our administration. And I want to thank the local leaders for together creating a task force-like response, knowing that we are at our best when we work together and coordinate resources, coordinate our communications to the maximum effect for the community that has been impacted. And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected. There are FEMA personnel who are going door to door to interact personally with folks, especially those who do not have electricity. But also that aid, if you have electricity, can be applied for online, and I encourage people to do that. FEMA will just basically verify your address, and then the process should take hold. FEMA is also providing tens of thousands more dollars for folks to help them be able to deal with home repair, to be able to cover a deductible when and if they have insurance, and also hotel cost. Today I'm also announcing that the President has approved the governor's request for 100% federal reimbursement of local costs. And Mayor, as you have pointed out, the burden to local governments, including the state government, is pretty immense. And so by announcing today and making the dedicated resources to cover 100% of local costs will have a huge impact on our ability to get relief to people as quickly as possible. And that will include, for example, what the federal government will do to reimburse local and state governments around issues like debris removal, which you can see just up and down this street, much less in other areas of the state and in the region. This is a big issue. I was speaking with one of the residents of the community who needs that big tree removed so she can actually get to work and make sure that her child is able to get to school when the schools reopen. So this is a very big part of the recovery process. That money of the federal reimbursement will also help with emergency services that are now being provided by the state, so that they can be reimbursed and then have the resources to keep providing those emergency services. Also, we will be covering the local government costs for food, water, and shelter. Again, resources that are desperately needed by the members of this community. And so my final point to the residents of this community and the region is that we are here for the long haul. There is the work that we have done together that was the immediate response, preparation for, and then the immediate response. after, but there's a lot of work that's going to need to happen over the coming days, weeks, and months. And the coordination that we have dedicated ourselves to will be long-lasting to get families, to get residents, to get neighborhoods back up and running. And my last point is this. I think that in these moments of hardship, one of the beauties about who we are as a country is people really rally together and show the best of who they are in moments of crisis. And we've seen that throughout the region, where communities are coming together, where people are helping perfect strangers, where they are providing food, water, shelter for their neighbors, and that neighbor may be somebody they've never met before, but are doing the work of helping each other out. And I think it really highlights the fact that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, and that the strength of who we are is we come to each other's aid in a time of need. So I thank everyone for doing that kind of work every day. And with that, there is more work to be done. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. I did receive updates in terms of what's happening in the state, and so far the number looks to be 33. The mayor was just sharing with me 7 in Augusta, Richmond County alone. 7 alone in Augusta, Richmond County. So the numbers are coming in, and part of the challenge of being accurate at this moment is that there are still so many areas that are remote, also rural areas, areas that are not easily accessible. So the assessment of the damage is being done across the board, and of course the highest priority is to locate and determine individuals, people who are in need, and making sure we're getting to them as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. In today's economic update, we're going to talk about housing, we're going to talk about protection for Canadian workers and industry, and some historic measures to support small business. I am joined by my colleagues. Minister Mary Ng is going to talk about tariffs. Minister Rechie Valdez is going to talk about the Canadian carbon rebate for small business and reductions in credit card fees that small businesses pay. Et Jean-Yves Duclos vous parlera du code de conduite en matière de carte de crédit et aussi des tarifs. Je voudrais commencer en parlant un peu des bonnes nouvelles concernant l'économie canadienne. Le Canada est le chef du file du G7 en ce qui concerne l'atterrissage en douceur. Nous avons eu dans les dernières semaines des bonnes nouvelles concernant l'inflation qui a passé à 2% en août. Et c'est maintenant 8 mois que l'inflation est dans la fourchette cible du Banque du Canada. Canada was the first G7 country to cut interest rates for the first time. Canada was the first G7 country to cut interest rates for the second time. And Canada was the first G7 country to cut interest rates for the third time. That is all good news for the small businesses we're going to be talking about today, and it is good news for every Canadian with a mortgage or who wants to buy a home. It is also good news that wages have now outpaced inflation for 19 months in a row. That means larger paychecks and greater purchasing power for Canadians. Okay, this brings me to our announcements for today. First of all, on the Canada carbon rebate for small businesses. Really big news, really good news, great support for small and medium-sized businesses. We're announcing today the payment amounts through the Canada carbon rebate. These will be delivered to small and medium-sized businesses in provinces and territories where the federal fuel charge applies. More than $2.5 billion is going to around 600,000 companies. And let me just give you some numbers. In Ontario, for a company with 10 employees, they will be getting back up to $4,010. For a company with 499 employees, they will be getting back up to $200,000. $1,099. These are significant sums of money. A business in Saskatchewan with 10 employees will be getting up to $11,560 back. A business in Saskatchewan with 499 employees will be getting up to $576,844 back. So these are real significant sums of money. They're going to make a big difference to Canadian small business. Rechie is going to talk about that in greater detail. Je veux aussi souligner des nouvelles concernant les prêts hypothécaires. Ce sont des bonnes nouvelles pour les propriétaires. Tous les Canadiens pourront changer de prêteur lors du renouvellement de leur prêt hypothécaire sans devoir se soumettre à une nouvelle simulation de crise. Cette mesure était déjà applicable pour les prêts hypothécaires assurés, mais on a eu une annonce la semaine passée du Bureau de superintendant des institutions financières qui a annoncé que cette mesure appliquera aussi pour les prêts hypothécaires non assurés, commençant le 21 novembre. C'est vraiment une nouvelle importante pour les propriétaires. Ça donnera plus de choix aux propriétaires quand ils renouvelent leur hypothèque. Finally, I want to talk about tariffs. Today is a significant day. Effective today, Canada is applying a 100% tariff on all Chinese-made EVs. We'll hear more about that from Minister Ng. We are also announcing today our final list of Chinese steel and aluminum products that will be subject to a 25% surtax. We've published that list. Happy to talk about it. And that surtax on Chinese steel and aluminum will be in effect from October 22nd. These are very important measures. These are about being sure that Canadian workers and Canadian industry are competing on a level playing field, that they are not facing unfair competition from Chinese overcapacity, that they are not facing unfair competition from businesses that do not follow the labour and environmental standards which apply in Canada. This is a very significant shift in Canadian policy, and it's a measure that our government is glad to be putting in place. Notre gouvernement agit pour soutenir les propriétaires, pour protéger et soutenir les petites et moyennes entreprises et pour soutenir l'industrie et les travailleurs et travailleuses canadiens et canadiennes. Merci pour votre attention et je passe maintenant la parole à ma collègue, la ministre Ng.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon, everyone. I won't say much more than this other than on the EV tariff decision that is coming into force today. What I want to just emphasize here is that the Canadian automobile sector, the manufacturers as well as the workers, support about 125 well-paying jobs across Canada. Many of these jobs are unionized jobs, and Canada's electric vehicle supply chain has the potential of being ranked first in the world. And right now, as the Deputy Prime Minister has said, these workers and the sector are facing unfair competition from Chinese producers who are benefiting from non-market policies and practices. And China's policy of over-subsidization and overcapacity in electric vehicles is creating an uneven playing field for workers and the auto industry. And the lack of rigorous labor and environmental standards are threatening workers and businesses globally, and it certainly will undermine Canada's long-term economic prosperity. As the Deputy Prime Minister has said, the 100% tariffs come into force today. We've had extensive consultations with our stakeholders, and they have confirmed the need for these exceptional measures. By imposing these tariffs, we're standing up for Canadian manufacturing, for their jobs, and sending a clear message that Canada will protect our industries and we will promote fair trade. Of course, the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum products from China will come into effect on October the 22nd. And these sectors in steel and aluminum support over 130,000 jobs across Canada. So these measures today are aimed at protecting our workers from unfair trade practices that is contributing right now to excess capacity and distorting global trade. And what we are doing is in step with what our global international partners are doing. Notre objectif est simple, défendre les emplois canadiens, stabiliser les secteurs clés et faire respecter les pratiques commerciales équitables sur lesquelles comptent nos travailleurs et nos fabricants. So let me just close by saying that it's vital for us to protect Canadian industries, our supply chains, and here it is from mines to roads, and our government's priority remains clear. Let's protect our Canadian businesses and our workers and the jobs, and we'll stand up for the best interests of Canadians and ensure that we promote fair trade. Thank you so much.
Okay, over to Rechie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi. I'm thrilled to be here with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Minister Ng, and Minister Duclos to kick off Small Business Month. We have some exciting news for Canadian small business owners and entrepreneurs. Small businesses, as we know, are the backbone of our economy, creating local jobs, enriching our communities, and our government is here to help turn the dream of entrepreneurship into reality for millions of Canadians. Today, we're announcing real, tangible measures that will lower the cost of doing business, put more money into the bank accounts of small businesses, and ultimately boosting their bottom line. Firstly, as you've already heard, for the Canada Carbon Rebate for small businesses, we are distributing a portion of the proceeds from the price on pollution directly to small businesses, and we're putting over $2.5 billion into the pockets of approximately 600,000 small businesses that have employees in the provinces where the fuel charge applies. This rebate will be deposited directly into your bank accounts before the end of this year. That's correct, the end of this year. Today we are announcing the Canada Carbon Rebate amounts for eligible small and medium-sized corporations. So, for example, a small business in Winnipeg with 10 employees will receive $4,810. A small business in Mississauga with 50 employees will receive $20,050, and a medium-sized business in Calgary will receive with 200 employees will receive $118,200. Again, this is real, tangible funds going right back to small businesses where the fuel surcharge applies. And the best part, you don't have to apply for this credit on your tax returns. The Canada Revenue Agency will automatically handle it for you, sending out payments before the end of this year for those that filed their taxes prior to July 15th of this year. For those small businesses that missed the July 15th deadline, good news, we are proposing to extend that deadline to the end of this year to December 31st, 2024, and these payments would be issued at a later date. Rest assured, small businesses, we have your back. Now let's talk about a pain point that I've heard directly from so many small businesses, which is credit card fees. When I was a small business owner, I remember how every single credit card payment ate into my bottom line, and at such a high rate. We're changing this. Beginning on October 19th, those fees will drop. We have negotiated with Visa and MasterCard to lower those credit card interchange fees by up to 27%. This will positively impact 90% of small and medium-sized businesses, saving eligible small businesses $1 billion over 5 years. For example, if you're a small business and processing $300,000 in credit card payments a year, you're currently paying about $4,000 in fees. As of October 19th, the changes that our government negotiated will save you over $1,000 annually. That's cash back right into your pocket, money that you can reinvest right into your business. These two measures builds on our government fulfilling our promise to lower the small business tax rate to 9%. This lower tax rate on small business income provides small businesses with about $6.2 billion in annual federal tax savings. So in summary, we lowered taxes for small businesses, we are further reducing fees, and delivering rebates. So you can focus on what you do best, which is running your business, hustling, building your community, and contributing greatly to our Canadian economy. But I do want to make one thing clear. Pierre Poilievre has clearly demonstrated that he is against all of these measures by voting against them. So he's against lowering taxes for small businesses, he's against lowering credit card fees, and he is against delivering Canada carbon rebates to small businesses. As a former small business owner myself, I can explain why. Pierre Poilievre has never had a real job. He doesn't understand the hustle, the sacrifice of what it takes to work really hard and start or grow a small business. Pierre actually qualified for a full pension at the age of 31. He can't even imagine the struggles small business owners face trying to balance their books, pay their employees, and make ends meet. The fact is, Pierre does not care about small businesses, not about entrepreneurs, and certainly not about the future of Canada's middle class. But our government does, and we've had their backs for small businesses from the beginning. And so we are here to provide small businesses with the tools and the supports needed so that small businesses can thrive. And when that happens, Canada thrives. Small businesses are the heart and soul of this country, and we all know that. We have small businesses everywhere, especially in our downtown cores, and we are here to help them succeed. So again, happy Small Business Month. Merci pour votre travail acharné, votre persévérance et votre passion. Thank you. Now I'll return it over to Minister Duclos.
Well, thank you, Rechie. Thank you, Chrystia, and thank you, Mary. Au Québec, comme on le sait, les PME représentent la grande majorité des entreprises et emploient aussi le plus grand nombre de travailleurs. Les PME du Québec jouent également un rôle critique dans nos chaînes d'approvisionnement les plus importantes, comme l'aérospatiale, l'industrie navale dans la grande région de Québec, ou encore dans les secteurs d'aluminium et de l'acier, dont a parlé la ministre Freeland il y a quelques instants. Et j'y reviendrai aussi moi-même dans quelques instants. Même si l'inflation est maintenant sous contrôle et que les taux d'intérêt sont à la baisse pour une troisième fois, les PME du Québec et du reste du Canada continuent toutefois de vivre des moments difficiles post-pandémiques. Le gouvernement canadien a été là pour ces PME durant la pandémie et aujourd'hui, nous voulons les appuyer à nouveau en annonçant le nouveau code de conduite destiné à l'industrie canadienne des cartes de crédit et de débit. Ce nouveau code de conduite permettra à près d'1 million de PME au Québec et ailleurs de mieux comparer les prix et les offres de différents processeurs de paiement, de cartes de crédit et de débit et de faciliter la location d'équipements tels que les terminaux de paiement. Ce nouveau code permettra aussi de réduire le délai de traitement des plaintes de PME de près de 80% à seulement 20 jours ouvrables. La majorité des grands joueurs de l'industrie a déjà accepté de se soumettre à ce nouveau code de conduite. C'est une bonne nouvelle pour les PME de partout au pays qui ne savent pas toujours comment se protéger de ces très grandes compagnies. Nous annonçons également aujourd'hui les nouvelles mesures pour protéger les travailleurs de l'acier et de l'aluminium des secteurs cruciaux au Québec et ailleurs au pays. Le Canada est le 4e producteur mondial d'aluminium au monde, après la Chine, l'Inde et la Russie. Et la vaste majorité des usines d'aluminium au Canada sont installées au Québec, à Bécancour, à Deschambault, au Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean et sur la Côte-Nord. En fait, parmi les 11 usines d'aluminium au Canada, seulement une est située à l'extérieur du Québec. C'est aussi au Québec que l'on produit l'aluminium le plus vert et le plus éthique au monde, grâce aux travailleuses et aux travailleurs du Québec. Aujourd'hui, pour protéger ces bons emplois et ceux associés aux chaînes d'approvisionnement en aluminium, nous publions la liste finale des produits d'acier et d'aluminium chinois qui sont soumis à des tarifs additionnels de 25%. Après consultation avec l'industrie, ces tarifs additionnels entreront en vigueur dès le 15 octobre prochain. Cela protégera les bons emplois de ces industries contre la compétition déloyale et les pratiques environnementales et sociales douteuses de la Chine. Merci.
Has been produced by Depictions Media. please contact us at depictions.media for more information.